Hi guys, today I wanted to do a quick flip through of a journal which has been both an art journal and my very first attempt at Book of Shadows, or a grimoire if you want to, depending on how you like to call it. Now, a few years ago I started looking into the path, and not necessarily the Wiccan path, but just a pagan based spirituality. And I wanted to record a lot of the things that I was looking up. I think what I probably did was I fell into the trap of just recording a lot of information, but it was less practice based, so I was sort of more doing the research and the reading up, but not too much of the actual practicing. So this is something I haven't continued to use this as a Book of Shadows. I probably you can see I do revert back to a art journal, which was its intended. It was given to me as a gift, and that's what it was intended for, basically. I don't know whether I'll ever set up a book that is a grimoire or a Book of Shadows, maybe someday. But for now, the planner, there's a ring binder planner that I'm using to record all of my learnings and day-to-day information on sort of like the spirituality and the path. So that's what I'm currently using at the moment. But anyway, let's go through this. So I just covered up the name there. This was a gift given to me by my art teacher in the last year of high school. Art was one of my favorite subjects. I just set a bit of an intention there in terms of using this as an art journal, and you can see that I started using it in that way. Just a bit of collaging and mucking around with paint and sparkles and things. And this, I didn't touch this for a good long while. Oh, hey Corbin. You gonna say hi to everybody? Corbin. I didn't pick this journal up for quite a while. I had it in my possession for quite a while, and it wasn't until the last few years that I actually decided to make use of it. So I hadn't been doing any art or craft or anything for quite a while. So I think I just ended up buying myself some cheap paints and watercolor pencils and things that I already had around the house to start this off. An Alice in Wonderland scene. I guess like a billboard inspired by The Fifth Element, just for fun, with some found images. I believe that was an image on an oracle card. Some mucking around with, some mucking around with some watercolors and some paint. So this is where I start getting, I guess, a little bit, I start using it as more of a Book of Shadows. It's just some information on some runes. I saw someone, Molly Roberts, made some runes with salt dough, and I thought that was really interesting, so I made some myself. I never really ended up using them, but it was a really fun exercise, so I thought that was pretty cool. This was some journaling about I guess the women in my life, so my grandmothers and my mother, and the fact that there were flowers that I really thought represented them or symbolized them, just because basically they were flowers that, you know, for example, the pansies. My nan, my paternal grandmother, would always have pansies growing in the winter, and just so many of them and lots of colors. So when I think of her, I think of pansies, or I think of freesias. I think of specific types of flowers. So that was where this is where we're gone back to an art journal. So Geralt from The Witcher, just some different types of eyes there. Just sketching, practice drawing on noses and hands. This was where I think I got a book out of the library called, I think it's Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, which was quite good. I always feel like it's a bit of a rush to, because I never actually finished doing all the exercises in the book. I feel like you tend to have to take the book back before you're ready with those sorts of things, so it might be something I need to purchase one day. Just a sort of like a, I guess, half cartoony, half sketch of self-portrait, I guess. That's not what my cat looks like, it's just a cat. Reconstructing an image from a postcard in a different way, drawing upside down. That was another exercise in that Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain book. So this is where I just did a bit of a journaling exercise. I was looking into Wicca. I think I was reading a Scott Cunningham book at the time, and he was mentioning the tools that that are relevant in Wicca, and this is where I was sitting there thinking about like the athame or the athame and what I could use. And I actually, as I was unpacking boxes, I discovered we had a letter opener with this sort of a handle to it, and I just thought, wow, that there's, what do you call it, correspondence for you. This is what I was talking about previously in having different flowers remind me of like my grandmothers and my mother. So my paternal grandmother would be pansies and freesias, which is something that she always grew, so you'd always find them in her garden. As for my mother, marigolds. In every house that she's lived in, she usually plants marigolds at some point, so it's something that I always thought of her as. And especially I remember one of our family friends, so we used to live next to them when I was quite young, and then we moved away, and they ended up moving away as well. And I remember one time they were coming to visit and they couldn't remember what the house number was, and they literally had a look for someone growing marigolds in the front yard, and they were correct. That was actually our house. So that, I just think that's a really funny like coincidence there as well. And my maternal grandmother would be the frangipani. She had a really big frangipani tree in her yard, and we spent, like all of us children, spent so much time climbing that tree and sitting in the tree and collecting the flowers, and you know, whether for like a vase or, you know, to make little like potions and like pretend like banquets out of the plants in the garden and things like that. So that was definitely my maternal grandmother. Anyway, a record of making your own chai mix. So I sort of did a pictorial representation of what goes into the mix, and then I go back to very much to the Book of Shadows again, and so a bit of information on the journaling on the Wheel of the Year, and so then I did a picture of the Wheel of the Year, and note that this is Southern Hemisphere as well. And then I believe I was going to go through and write down information about each of the Sabbats, and I think I'd decided to go through and do all the pictures and then do a page, which probably wasn't the best idea, because, you know, what if I'd wanted to write more than a page? Anyway, so I did that, but I never ended up, I did the decoration, but I never ended up filling in the details. I didn't do anything for a Astara. This is probably the first of the Sabbats that we'd touched on, so that's probably why it was filled in, but I couldn't think of what I wanted to draw or paint for it. This was just an image out of a magazine, and I just decided to get the paints out and do some color matching, I suppose, or some painting to go along with that. This is just some information on a bit of the star symbols, if you like. I don't really know a lot about it, and it was just something I just was interested in, so I think I spent a little bit of time looking into it, but I'm definitely not qualified to make any comments on that one. Back to a little bit of art there. And then I believe I was going to do information on the elements, and I really disliked my painting style. I was using cheap paints, and that probably didn't help, as well as my technique, which is to paint as if you're going to paint a wall up and down, so that probably didn't help much either. Anyway, so then I think I stuck, so this was some like sort of vinyl-y stuff that you can cover things with, so I stuck some on there, and I think I've covered up, yeah, I've covered up some of the other pages. You can see that I painted them, and I was going to write on top of it, but then I didn't really have the like nice pens that wrote really well over top of paint either. So some washi tape, I don't know what I was going to do there, but I think I was just mucking around. Some more washi tape, and this is where I start doing some sketching, and I was following along with a YouTuber, Lethal Chris Drawing. So I've done a couple of his drawings, and it is amazing. If you spend the time, that the sketches come out a whole lot better. And obviously shading is like super important, because that's what gives you the depth and everything. So both of these were Lethal Chris Drawing as well. And it's interesting, I remember reading in that book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, that a lot of people think that they can't draw, and it's not necessarily that, but what happens is, you know, when you're young, you do a lot of drawing, and it doesn't matter to you really when you're young what it looks like. But then if you don't keep practicing, or you don't, you know, like you put it down and you're doing other things, like you're learning other subjects and everything like that, basically your drawing style, or the way that you draw symbols, like the way you might draw a house as a child, or that's where your drawing sort of, it's not that your drawing skill stops, but for example, if you weren't to reference anything, you might revert to how your 7-year-old drew a house, for example, because that's the symbol that you remember sort of drawing. Something along those lines. But it was very interesting. So you can see here, for example, here I had a reference and something to follow along with, so it turned out like quite well. And then over the page, here is where I'm sort of drawing almost from my mind, or, you know, I'm not looking at references, and you can see that it sort of it does revert back to sort of like a younger age, if you will. So I think there's definitely merit in that way. And I think I was looking at watercolor pencils there. This book doesn't take watercolor very well. It's very much a like a sketch and a drawing and a pen book. It's not a watercolor book, and that's all I've got. So I'm going to probably over time fill that with sketching and drawing, I think, instead of Book of Shadow stuff, and a little bit of pen / water testing there. So I think I might end up going back and over the pages that I really don't like. So obviously I haven't done anything with these. The pages that I don't like, I might do some collaging and stuff over them, so that you know, they turn into something that I really enjoy. I don't mind some of these pictures. I may keep it, and I might do something that's maybe I'll do a collage which symbolizes Imbolc, for example. So I might do something like that, but I definitely I don't think I'll be continuing this as a Book of Shadows, and I'll keep the information in there. It's sort of been interesting to see the flip through from one to the other, but I think ultimately I do want to keep it as a sketchbook, and I at the moment, because I'm still quite new to all of the information, I like the idea of being able to move it and add to it and change, or as my perspective changes, be able to journal about those sorts of things. So having it in a planner really helps, because I can just add pages where I need to. I can take things out if you know, for example, if I was going to be writing information about Mabon or something, I can just keep adding pages as necessary, and I can then add pages maybe if I'm celebrating Mabon over the years or whatever. I can add to that, whereas here it's very much fixed. So I'll definitely be using this as a sketchbook. But I thought this might be interesting just to do a little flip through of it to show you guys, and you can see sort of like my early attempts there. I was also looking at Book of Shadows at the time, with grimoires that were very visual and very artistic, and while I absolutely love that aesthetic, I don't think I've got it in me to make every page like beautiful and, you know, like a work of art. So that was something that I think I recognized was not going to be something sustainable for me. So that's probably why it's flipped from a Book of Shadows to a sketchbook, on and off over time as well. So this is one of the books that I'm going to be using up, and obviously it's probably going to take me a lot longer than a year to use it up, but I do one day want to see this complete, because this gift meant a whole lot to me, because of I guess the time and the place. So it's something I want to hang on to, and eventually I want to say that I've been able to like fill this book completely with like creative works. So that was my first attempt at a Book of Shadows / grimoire and / art sketchbook. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you in another video. Bye guys.